about the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. Just before I move on, I was thinking this morning that, you know, even though when we're talking about biological diversity, part of the CBD's work deals with oceans and also with inland waters. And so with oceans, of course, they're talking about ocean acidification that results from warming and climate, and underwater noise that's disturbing animals and harming them, and also all of the biodiversity that's connected to water. So that linkage to me is very important, because as we know, an Aboriginal worldview, it's holistic. You think about things holistically, and it isn't ever just one thing or another. It is a whole process and system of things that are connected. So the first document that I want to share with you is anybody want to take a try at pronouncing? It's a Mohawk word. It's pronounced Agwegu. So it means everything in creation. And it was named such by the Convention on Biological Diversity because it was negotiated and adopted in Montreal, where the biological diversity meetings are held. So this is the full name of the document. It is for the cultural, environmental, and social impact assessments regarding developments proposed to take place on, or which are likely to impact on, sacred sites and on lands and waters traditionally occupied or used by Indigenous and local communities. It is a voluntary guideline, so even though the treaty is a legal treaty at the CBD level, this particular document is considered voluntary. But I think the more important thing is that it exists, and it can provide a really good framework for you when you are developing partnerships. It was used quite successfully in Finland by the Sami, who wanted a framework to protect or manage one of their wilderness areas, and so they used the Agwegu guidelines to do that. This next one always comes with an apology for me, because it's also a Mohawk word and I have a really hard time saying it. So I'm just going to take my time here and try and say it right. So it's the Gari Wayi Ri. I can't say it twice. I just say the code of ethics. So in Mohawk, the interpretation of that means the proper way. So they both with the Agwegu guidelines and this code, Indigenous peoples from all over the world worked on these for years and put them forward to be considered by 193 governments of the world. And they were adopted eventually. It took a long time of working out the content. But when you think about these, I think that's also important, is that it was Indigenous hands that shaped these documents. So this one in particular is specifically designed to protect and respect cultural and intellectual heritage. So it tells you what it's about. If you look at it, it has ethical principles for the basis of relationships, such as transparency clauses and full disclosures and confidentiality clauses. Trying to speed up here. So Nagoya Protocol is about access to, they call it genetic resources at the international level. Again, that's about plants and animals and microorganisms. But it's also about access and benefit sharing. And how, I think we heard this morning, you know, there's Indigenous people are often the recipients of the environmental damages that come from decision making, but conversely, we're not always recipients of the benefits that come from people's usage of the knowledge, whether that's specifically about a certain plant or animal, or about a landscape, or other kinds of really, in my own view, when people adopt the worldview and apply it, there's not often recognition or gratitude for that. So this came up as from the 2002 World Summit on Sustainable Development, and it came into force in 2014, so it's just new. Canada has not signed it. We're, in this country, Canada is considered basically a user country. So quite often what happens is our researchers like to go into developing countries and harvest plants or traditional knowledge about plants and bring it home. And the Nagoya Protocol would actually, it's designed to help facilitate that relationship in a more equitable way, but a lot of the developed countries don't want to sign it because they see it as a potential impediment to their work. So, but I think as sovereign Indigenous nations that we need to know about these documents, because if we want to use them, I think we should have the right to use them. So finally, we get to the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples that was adopted in 2007. And Canada didn't agree on this, of course, until 2010, even though Parliament had directed them to adopt it much earlier. They didn't do it until 2010. So the declaration lays out 46 articles about what Indigenous peoples worldwide see as their human rights and their very unique Indigenous rights. And I really believe in partnership development, that your partnership should start by reviewing together. So I think we know from what we've heard that water management is systemic, and that Indigenous people are working here, they're working in the US, they're standing up at Standing Rock, but also in other parts of the world that we never hear about. The work that is done internationally is really important because people have a chance to share and exchange information that they wouldn't normally be able to do. And I think it's important that we learn from each other what works and what has been unsuccessful. I think I would really like to highlight that we really do need more Aboriginal people in the sciences. For those of us who are studying in those fields, it can be a very lonely experience. And so many of us end up radiating to other forums where we can be with other Aboriginal learners to share and exchange knowledge and really to support each other. I don't know that there's any other Aboriginal student in my school, and I have to ask myself, how can we change that? Because as people whose culture is rooted in land and water-based knowledge, energy systems, climate patterns, how can we not be naturals in the sciences? So I think we need to do better there. And I think this morning some people were encouraging that too. And we need to build capacity for Indigenous peoples to engage in research and environmental decision making. And we heard that over and over this morning, from a practical to a theoretical level. That capacity just needs to be there. That picture was taken in 2012, and it was a really great honor. I was elected co-chair of the Indigenous Forum. There was about 100 of us there for the Conference of the Parties on Biodiversity. And I think it's the first time ever a North American person was elected. And my co-chair is sitting down in the front from South America. So it's great to work with people from elsewhere. So how do we decolonize the way we learn and make decisions about the earth? I think that we need to create better entry points to facilitate Indigenous peoples in the sciences. But I also think we need to work more together on a national scale, to work collaboratively, but also proactively. And Tim and I were talking about that just this morning, because when there's some damage, like the diesel field spill in the coast, or a pipeline rupture, or some other accident, it becomes a flashpoint for a reaction. And those people who get up and go and protest and do their thing, thank God for them, for doing that. But I also think we need to be proactive and be more assertive about studying, getting involved, and taking places in leadership roles where you can evoke change on a broader level. So in my own PhD research, I just have one slide on this, and this is my last one. So what I'm studying is, I'm asking Aboriginal post-secondary education places of learning across Canada, talking with 10 places. I'm asking them how they understand this term sustainability in relation to their own traditional knowledge and their territory. Because I think we hear that word sustainability a lot, but I also recognize that Indigenous people talk about that using different words, and they may not always be recognized in scientific discussions. So I'm also asking how they're involved in community-based conservation and environmental decision-making, because I think that our most learned people and I mean that respectfully, I don't mean to disrespect anyone else, but I think people that could be working on to help communities write papers, do research on things that matter to those communities. I'm not sure that we've made enough connections there. So I'm asking about that. And finally, I'm asking how we might work together better at a post-secondary level to work on these concepts of sustainability and traditional knowledge, and how we might work to have a little more voice in some of those decisions and learning ourselves. Yeah. So I thank you very much to the hosts of the forum, and